Welcome to the Naval Services Family Line, CPO Selectee Spouse Information Session. My name is Nellie Moore, the Core Director at FamilyLine. We are pleased to share this session, which will be about 40 to 45 minutes on the Chief Selectee season, background and history of the chief role in the Navy, the pinning ceremony, khaki ball, and other frequently asked questions with some answers. We hope you find this informative, and if you have further questions on the topic, look for our publications, resources, and podcasts on the topic at our website at nsfamilyline.org. Thank you. So thank you all for joining. Hopefully you can see my presentation. It is the Naval Services Family Line CPO Selectee Spouse Information Session, virtual sessions. As you are aware. And I want to just start off too with just saying congratulations to all of you who are participating right now. My name is Nellie Moore. I am also a Navy spouse. My sailor has been in the Navy a little over 21 years now. He's a senior chief. We've been part of the chief community, I think, for over 7+ years now. It's kind of hard, time flies by. And it's just kind of amazing how quickly time goes for us here. I am the core director for Naval Services Family Line. In previous roles, besides being married to my sailor, I've also been an ombudsman for one of his commands. So just kind of sharing a little bit about my background. Our agenda for today is, a quick overview of Family Line, our icebreaker, general CPO selectee spouse information and why you guys are here today. Frequently asked questions and answers to those questions, just general tips and resources out there, and any Q&A also. And then I'd like to share, please feel free to raise your hand too as we're going. If you have a question or I'm going too fast and want to kind of do a little bit deeper dive, I welcome that also. So, okay. Really quick, let's see, sorry. So who Family Line is we are a volunteer nonprofit organization dedicated to serving our Navy spouses around the world. We were established in 1965, so we've been around for quite some time. Our mission is to empower the sea service families to meet the challenges of the military lifestyle with education, resources, and mentoring. Some of the areas that you may have heard of us before, especially if you've taken our Compass course, I know that seems to be where a lot of people kind of recognize who we are. So we're the ones who host the Compass course. We have our Anchors Away and Sea Lake publications. The publications is another well-known resource that we have out there. The last couple of years, we have our podcast. So I'll talk about that a little bit later as a resource. And in here in the career transitions, we support through the core program is having the CPO Selectee Symposiums. And then also we have our command leadership mentoring programs known as the Naval Spouses Leadership Courses. So as our icebreaker, I would love, as you all have your cameras on, is if you can share your name, your location, number of years you've been connected to the Navy, and maybe a fun fact about yourself or what you'd like to get out of today. So if I can have a volunteer, that'd be great. And
I can go.
Perfect.
My son's in the bathroom singing, so if you hear singing in the background.
Yeah,
Colton, I'm sharing something, be quiet. I am Marshall. Currently we are located Kings Bay Base, Georgia, but we live in Florida. I've been connected to the Navy my entire life. My dad was in for 24 years and my husband has been in for 15 years. And a fun fact about myself is I was also an ombudsman for his previous command.
Great, thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
I can go next. I'm Kate. My husband is stationed in San Diego. My son and I just moved to Indiana in July. So he's geobaching, but we're flying back for the pinning ceremony. So yay. We've been married 13 years. He's been in for 16. Um, I was also an ombudsman. And um, I don't know. I guess I was thinking it was going to be more specific for San Diego information, but we'll see.
Okay, great. And Kate, I'm also actually in San Diego myself, and so I can share a little bit more about that maybe in the Q&A section too, or offline if you like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melissa. Currently in San Diego, just moved back to San Diego, I think in March from Illinois. And I guess fun fact, I was an ombudsman at Great Lakes.
Great.
I've been with my husband over 9 years, married for, I don't know, we got married right before COVID. So 4 years, 4 years, a little over 4 years. So, yeah, just looking to learn a little bit more. And same here. I was thinking it was a little bit more specific to San Diego. So I'd like to hear what opportunities are there, especially when your sailor's not home.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, we have a couple more, maybe Bree or Stephanie.
Hi, my name's Brianka. Right now we are in Japan for his overseas tour. We've been here for 2.5 years. Been married coming up on 9 years, and he just made 20 years in the Navy last month. And I was the FRG vice president for where he is right now. Did it for a year. And we are going to be leaving soon, so we don't know where we're going to yet because orders changed now since he's been selected and he was up for new orders. And just any information would be nice.
Great. Thank you for sharing.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. We are at NAS JRB Fort Worth. Like some others, I've been an ombudsman for 2 different commands for my husband. Been married 10 years, 11 years, and been together since 2009. And he just celebrated 22 years in the Navy last month. And I'm hoping to get a little bit better understanding of what's going on, like spouse wise, because there's not a lot of communication for us on this base.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. And that's definitely a long time, right, as part of the Navy for his career. And I think we have is it one more person left? Oh, you're fine. If you want to share maybe a little bit later, and we all probably have similar experiences in life where we got multitasking at its best, right? Too out there. So I think I shared most of myself, other than I acknowledge I didn't share where we were located. I'm in San Diego. So for those in San Diego, I welcome if you can maybe share a little bit more, or even the process. This was intended to be virtual just to reach more spouses out there because we don't have as many leads in different locations. And just based off of kind of just resources that we have available. So hopefully I can answer questions or help you navigate maybe just a general experience too, or how to connect further. So in general, congratulations. I know some of you seem like very senior in the naval community, but just want to acknowledge that this is an incredible honor and achievement within your sailor's career. It will be a rewarding and memorable period for them, generally of their career. They'll be part of the Fellowship of the Chiefs. And I do want to acknowledge during this time, it will be can be very challenging and exhausting for your sailors also. So it's its own process of initiation and leadership skills that they're going to be training during this period. And even even though this is like, remote too, I think like the 6 weeks or something, But that first full year, though, they'll really be transitioning into what it means to be a chief and that new role that they'll be in the Navy. It truly is that leadership role. That's just want to highlight that they will be at this turn really more and more responsible for the growth and development of their sailors and part of that chief's mess and development within the Navy community. And as a CPO spouse, it sounds like a handful of you already definitely have been part of, the potential leadership roles or mentoring roles that we can play in the Navy. But this is also another opportunity just to know that you can turn into more of a mentoring role and role model for the spouses within your command or community at large. I just want to acknowledge this, when I look back and reflect on my husband's career, I really saw a shift in even in himself. So besides his role that he played, part of in the Navy, I saw that big leadership role, even personality growth that I personally saw for him too. So it's challenging, it's different, but I would say that professional growth also bleeds into the personal life a lot of times too. And I would say I just saw a big change in who he was as a person too. So the origins of the Chief Petty Officer actually, it has different origins, but the chief term was first used in 1776, which if you think that's, the birth of our nation. So even there's an acknowledgement back then. It was officially established though with the pay grade of Chief Petty Officer in the 80s in 1983. Another fun fact, and maybe because I'm a female, I wanted to highlight in 1917, the first female chief was sworn into the U.S. Navy as a yeoman, even though the pay grade was established in the 83. So I think, just speaks to the chief origin having a long time within the Navy community. The chief mess, as you may hear, it's essentially the unit cohesion that will be in a command. They offer, kind of that mentoring, the training. It's the idea that it's not from one personal perspective. It's really the cohesion in the unit of the mess that help, guide and lead that command and junior sailors. What you see as a picture on the right hand side is, the felled anchor, and what it symbolizes is U is for unity, S is for service, and N is for navigation. Obviously, it has the other version when you look at it too, like US Navy to us, but that's also, one beyond the US Navy being unity, service, and navigation, the chain being symbolic for flexibility and chain of life. And then the anchor is the hope and glory in the fulfillment of all God's promises to our souls, and that we must keep steadfast in faith and encouraged to abide in our proper station amidst the storm of temptation, affliction, and persecution. So this is all when you see that within their uniform or pinning, just a lot of their clothes, all of that you'll see, and that's really what it is truly symbolic for at large. So the chief season, and I know it's already a couple weeks in, so you may have already be experiencing some of these activities or learning or hearing about some of these activities from your sailor. Hopefully they would have already had their own meet and greet with the mess. They would have already hopefully had their, selectee leadership course in doc. And I was kind of making an assumption you probably have already had the spouse meet and greet. I know in our command we had it, I think 2 weekends ago. So hopefully you all have had that. I know I'm going to first acknowledge though, if you're geo-bachelling, obviously you won't be there locally to be part of that. Or if they're deployed, they may not, I'm not too sure. Also, they may not have had it yet because they're deployed. But hopefully there will be some communication or connection virtually in some respects. There's, kind of the other things that are going on too is just the initiation of PRTs. There will have had your selectee will have a sponsor, so that should already have been assigned to them. They'll have just different versions of memorization. They'll have to memorize songs and history, and they'll be quizzed on all that. So I kind of when I saw that, I kind of had to remember like, oh yeah, like, and I remember my husband like repeating stuff over and then just like standing in front of me and I'm reading, looking at and like he's saying it to me to try to help him memorize. They create charge books, which is very memorable. So they'll actually create a wood type encasing, and then they'll have a kind of like a binder book inside of it where they get actually what's called charges. So it's different inspiration things that come from other chiefs that they'll ask for. They'll definitely have various PT sessions and training sessions with the mess, and then they'll have their final night. And so typically that's what you kind of almost, I don't know if you've heard of it already, but they will have an overnight. It'll be challenging. It'll be physically and emotionally challenging. Probably over the years, I think there isn't as much as what maybe what was done in the past. So I'm not too sure if, I think it's I'm trying to be kind of respectful, but I think before they had a little bit more hazing, where now I think it is less of that. And it's more of like training versus like kind of a hazing of it. So, but that will literally, if it's kind of very similar, should be the night before they get pinned. So just acknowledging you won't see your sailor if you are local with them that night before, and you'll pretty much see them at the pinning ceremony next. And my husband definitely looked like he stayed up the whole night. And I had to come, if I recall correct, kind of had to come with his, khakis, and I even brought a toothbrush because he told me he needed like everything. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. I brought deodorant, toothbrush for him too. So it almost reminds me of like when you go to college or something, or you're doing a night over and you look like a mess. But then having a graduation that next morning too. So the pinning ceremony, which is it's the main big event of the season. I'm going to acknowledge it was traditionally happened mid-September, but in COVID, the season had to move to the right. And so I think they still are trying to bring it closer and closer to the mid of September, but it should be happening towards the end of September. I want to say in the 20s. And within the pinning ceremony, it's essentially where it's truly what you think, kind of like that step where if you see that middle picture where it's the chiefs, the mess, the commanding officer, they're all there to essentially celebrate and witness in a formal ceremony for the sailors to get acknowledged and initiated as a chief. And so it's really a big milestone. And then want to acknowledge that your spouse's sponsor is the one who's essentially also part of the ceremony where they put the cover in place, but you as a spouse or a family member whom your sailor asked to will also be pinning them. So you'll kind of see in that bottom right picture where, it looks like his spouse and his daughter are pinning him at the same time. And it's most likely his sponsor holding his daughter right there. And it's pretty typical that children are involved. So I highly encourage you if you're open to that, to having them be part of it. And it's really is a special moment and really a kind of a celebration that it is a collective collective unit that helps your sailor get to that point in their career too. I feel like I'm going kind of fast and talking fast, so I'm going to kind of pause here and see if there's any questions on the pinning ceremony or what I've covered thus far of the current 6 weeks that you're in.
My husband's currently deployed, so is it command by command if they will do a ceremony when they get back?
Yeah, I would probably believe so. For sure, the khaki ball is acknowledged as will happen when they get back. They could have the ceremony even in the deployment itself, but I think it really depends on their senior leadership of what they decide how to perform it. But I have a feeling it probably would be during their deployment if they're not going to come home anytime close to September too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so acknowledging, because I just mentioned it too, is there is the khaki ball and their uniforms. So this is when traditionally soon after their pinning, they'll have what is called the khaki ball. In that bottom picture, you'll see that's what they wear. They wear their khakis to this ball, and it's a major event. It's an opportunity for the chief's mess to welcome the new chiefs and their spouses to the community. It's actually a really, I find it as fun of event. If and a lot of times better than kind of like the holiday parties or the other events that I've gone to. It's kind of just more, it feels like more community in that sense. I'm going to acknowledge their uniforms. They'll have their change in uniforms. So now they'll have their new khakis, and it's part of just showing their transition in duties, but also kind of in that uniform perspective. Also want to note that they won't receive their initial clothing allowance for these new uniforms until they've actually received their official advancement pay. So that's just something to note. It's a question that I have of more detail there too, but essentially what will happen is that they'll be able to still go to the exchange, purchase their uniforms, but it'll essentially be on like a tab that they'll have to make their full payment by the time they receive their official advancement pay.
I just did this for my husband. You can set up an auto pay and it's 1/12 of the total balance.
Okay.
But, I mean, I just did it today and it has to be paid off by August of next year.
Yeah, and that's when he'll should get his full advancement pay too. And I believe it's like within so many days of that advancement pay. But it's everything. It's the khakis, it's the whites, it's like all of their uniforms that they have to upgrade essentially. Okay, so this is to go over like the frequent questions that are asked during the season or the shift is, how can we pay for the uniforms, which we just talked about. It's that kind of like initial payment and then installment payments, and then it's fully due 15 days after receipt of their clothing allowance, and it's through the exchange. And then the other thing is kind of when does your spouse actually start getting paid as a chief? So it's essentially paid increments, and it's based off seniority. The selectees in each rating are divided into 12 increments. And then essentially what happens is they'll get at the very least no less than 3% more each month. And then by that 12th month, they'll get the full 67% left. But if they're like a bit more senior, then they'll get more than that 3%, but that's at the very least. And then you can expect their full advancement that within that next September timeframe, or it would probably be August. It kind of just know that it's going to slowly grow. And then if they have a lot of seniority, then it would be a little bit higher than that 3% too. And then, another question is, can I help with and attend selectee events? So just remember that, and I think we've chatted about it here, is that there will be the meet and greet, and that's a perfect opportunity to meet the mess, meet the CMC, understand a bit. They'll share about the training events and the season itself. And then it's just another opportunity to show your support to your chief, and you'll be able to, they should communicate to what you'll be able to attend or not. I think in COVID and post-COVID, some of it has changed where maybe there isn't as many events to attend. It's probably more about their training versus them, because I don't think they're able to do as many or do any fundraising events anymore. But that's where at times as spouses we went to, is those fundraisers. Another question is, my spouse has been with the Navy for a while, but I'm a newlywed, and how can I understand more? What we recommend always is talk to your local ombudsman, and you can attend our Compass events. Going to acknowledge our Compass events too are really, really helpful. It's about, I think, a 3-day event of training where you really learn and deep dive into the Navy. I think we have senior spouses here, but if you are a newer spouse, I encourage you to take that. I can acknowledge when I married my sailor, he had been in for a little over 8 years. So he was way familiar with the Navy, but I wasn't. And I took Compass and I found it to be extremely helpful because it gives you just even background knowledge, history, understanding, and even navigating local resources too. So this is for those who are deployed. My sailor just made chief, but he or she is deployed. Can I still be involved? So I'm going to acknowledge it is more difficult when they're deployed, but what we do encourage is you know, make sure you're sharing your personal congratulations, encouraging them. And then it will be really probably when they come back, when you'll be really able to be more engaged and hopefully be able to attend that khaki ball and meet more spouses at that point too. I would, in this scenario, encourage you to also lean on your ombudsman to see if there's other spouses in the same, you know, kind of situation as yourself to already get to meet them and things to that extent. You know, other questions that come is, you know, as terminology, just to understand more terminology of CMC and COB. So CMC is Command Master Chief and COB is Chief of the Boat on submarines. And so this is, you know, higher level enlisted positions that hold more responsibility within the community and command over the sailors and families. And those are the ones who will report to the commanding officer. There is situations though that you may not have a CMC, that you'll have a senior enlisted position, and then that would be in fill and in place of the CMC role. Okay, so as a chief spouse, you know, what is some leadership role opportunities? I acknowledge that a handful of you already shared ombudsman and FRG, so those are great areas. Also, you know, feel free to really design as what meets you and how you desire to potentially take a lead role. And that's something to discuss with your spouse and setting priorities with him or her and following them. And so, you know, once my husband shifted into chief, that's when I decided to really go into ombudsman and then volunteer. And I found myself volunteering for Naval Services FamilyLine. You know, really, it spoke to me of how we're here to support spouses, and that's where, and it just whatever speaks to you, right? If it's volunteering or if it's just being more active and trying to meet more spouses locally and encouraging your local community to be created within your command, too. Other, you know, areas would be also, you know, mentioned like the FRG, or if you want to, maybe it's the USO, or even we had a recent event that had the Navy Corps Marine Court Relief Society, and even that presenter was sharing how they're always looking for volunteers too. So just thinking, maybe not necessarily, even if you're not want to take as much of a responsibility role, you could be a volunteer that maybe has just a couple hours a week or once a month or something. So traditional social events and spouse attire. So in the khaki ball and the navy ball. So the khaki ball is meant to be not as formal. It's really meant to be more in that semi-formal, business formal, or cocktail type of attire. And so with that, kind of, here are some examples, you know, since we have all ladies on this call, you know, you can wear that business dress or like the business suit, if that's kind of your style more, or you can wear the semi-formal. I would say that's where it's at knee length, not necessarily at to the floor, because to the floor is more of the more formal attire, which would fall in the navy ball section, or the, you know, kind of that black cocktail dress. itself. So those are just some general ideas. If you are attending a Navy ball, that's where I'm going to acknowledge it's way more formal, where you're going to have kind of where I think of, those really the long dresses, stuff that you may go, be the mother of the bride type formal for a wedding almost look in that respect. And so this is to be, respectful and just share that everybody does have their own style, but you also don't want to show up where like you're the one that everybody's kind of looking at. So what I did here is give examples of what is acceptable, what's not. You'll see it all. You really will. So just acknowledging that something that's really too short is not really, appropriate. Something that looks like you're going to go to the Vegas club, I would say steer away from. That's kind of like the pantsuit that I was just mentioning. And then just acknowledging that jeans are never appropriate for the khaki ball. If you're, from it is more casual, but not to that level of casual. And here's kind of like variety of clips of just ideas, because I feel like that's kind of always the question that people have in the social media too. I see that a lot, maybe on Facebook and stuff, like, what are you wearing, or what are you thinking, what do you think of this dress? So these are just some ideas, not that it has to be these exact ones, but just food for thought, and to help kind of when you're thinking of what to purchase or what to borrow even. I'm going to pause here if there's any questions or comments on what I've covered thus far.
I did just want to pop in and say sorry earlier. I have a 3-month-old, and of course his feeding time was right when this hit. So I'm so sorry.
I apologize. I'm happy you're saying hello here.
Yes, thank you so much. So my name is Amalia. My husband was originally stationed in Groton, Connecticut. He was a submarine force. He has now converted over to NC and is still remaining in Connecticut. He's been in for 7.5 years, so really, really proud of him and his accomplishment with this. I'm very, very proud. I work full-time. I'm in the finance industry, so juggling full-time, 3-month-old baby, 2 dogs. It's a bit, but we're just going with the flow, and I'm just thankful to be part of this call and kind of get some support and meet fellow selectee spouses. So thank you.
Great. Thank you for sharing that too. And so congratulations to your sailor and to yourself too. It is a big accomplishment, and it's team effort by all means. And yeah, and I hope we make connections for yourself, even though, I know we're all kind of different areas. I do want to just say I welcome if anybody has general questions or want to be more connected to the chief spouse, feel free to always kind of reach out to myself, or I will even at the end welcome if people feel comfortable with me sharing everybody's emails to who attended. I will do that too. So maybe you can make some connections in that respect. And I do understand the full-time work, that's my life here also. And I have 2 boys that are 6 and 9. So it's always a joy. I remember baby stages. Sometimes I miss it, but other times I'm really glad I don't have a stroller anymore too. Any other questions of just what I've gone this far, and we're getting a little bit closer to the end, but I just want to make sure nobody has any remarks or comments or questions here.
Any suggestions on what to wear to the pinning?
Yeah, that's another great, and maybe that was your question too.
It was.
Yeah, so I would say it doesn't have to be maybe as nice as the khaki ball, but you want to make it probably business nice, if that makes sense. So, and I would say it probably depends of what I would select to wear depending on where they're having the pinning. So if they're having it inside, I probably would feel very comfortable wearing a flowy dress. If they're having it outside, like in literally like the bay, like where wind is flowing, I'd probably wear pants. So I'm going to share, I ended up wearing myself kind of what I would wear of like business nice, where I wear a really pretty blouse, and I picked navy not that you have to, but you know, just kind of went with the, I'm going to pick navy to wear. And then I wore capri pants with high heels. And I just, because it was outdoors and I knew where we were going to be, it was literally where all the helicopters are and there's so much wind. It was just not, I was more worried about holding on to a dress. But if hopefully that helps, you know, something were to a church event, you know, something like that.
And usually how long is the pinning ceremony?
Yeah, great question. It depends how many sailors are getting pinned. So I would say probably, I would just say to put a time on it, an hour. It could easily be less than that because with no matter what, even if it's only 3 or 4 sailors that getting pinned, they are going to have a beginning, you know, kind of acknowledging the tradition, acknowledging who's walked in, a certain level of rank. Even those selectee spouses who are about to become chiefs will have their own kind of like moment that they'll have to do like a certain level. I just can't think of the name of it. And then, so I'd say at least 45 minutes to an hour if it's only a couple. If it's a large group, which that happened to be my spouses, it was a really, really big group. It was like over 2 hours, I want to say. It was actually, and so I think asking your sailor how many are in their class will help you gauge too. Great question.
And also, with the pinnings, like whatever the anchors they pin on themselves or the family members pin on, since we have 2 kids, should I let them do it and just stand behind and watch? Like, how should I delegate that?
It's personal preference. I think it'd be great if you still pin one yourself as a spouse. And if your kids are both young, it's kind of helping them pin it. If they're older, they obviously can do it where one can pin, like push in, and one could put the actual pin in the back. And that's a way that they can kind of co-do it together. And it feels really nervous when you're out there. So as much as you can like just breathe and relax and you'll be fine. And everybody feels nervous if that helps too. Any other on the pinning ceremony itself?
So when you're pinning, I know that it's supposed to be like a certain distance or whatever. Does it really matter that day, or is it just get it on there?
Yeah, so as you can see in that top picture with the general getting his cap on, where his pins are, that's kind of generally where you could think of putting it. Honestly, I would say you're fine because it's in the end the sailor when they wash it and they're going to put the pin where they want to after anyways, you know, like moving on from the first day of pinning, right? So if you can see
uniform
kind of
inspections.
yeah, I would not stress about it too much, but you can see it's just kind of like in the corners of their collar in that upper right picture, but I wouldn't stress too much. I will share though, I was like, my hand was shaky and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to drop the pin. But it's fine. Just know like everybody feels like that too. Okay, any other questions on this one? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move forward. Sorry, the quick slide movement here. So other, you know, just practical tips of just having that, you know, your spouse, your sailor spouse's different role in the military also just means that remember to take care of yourself and your family, being yourself, and also trying to be friendly, you know, be friendly and appropriate in that role model and being positive. Your spouse will have more duties and just know that it's part of the role. And that's where it's just trying to share, you know, make sure you're taking care of yourself and your family and being positive all at the same time. Because the stress that they'll have at work obviously can bleed into family and vice versa. And it's always about the teamwork. If I can highlight, that is the most important also. And it's the, the unit of the family teamwork. So other, general resources that are out there is we, at the Naval Services FamilyLine, we do have a publication that you can download. It's within our shop. It's for free. And it will give you kind of essentially, and it's a magazine now. So it'll give you kind of even more of a deep dive of what I went over today. It's a great resource. You can, I know you can get it virtual. I think you can get it mailed to yourself too. So if you'd like it as a hard copy, you can get it mailed. We have a season on our season 2 in our podcast. It goes over it talks about the Chief Petty Officer role. So that's another way to learn more and deeper dive of it. And then if you have a friend who you think would be great for them to get more exposure, you can share these resources, and that we also have stuff in our archives on our YouTube channel also. This concludes the CPO Selectee information session. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you found this informative. If you are looking for more information, as noted in the presentation, please see our website at nsfamilyline.org for the Chief Petty Officer publications and podcasts, or any future virtual or in-person events.